Caracas, Venezuela, under the heavy air of expectation, the words of President Gustavo Petro carried both urgency and defiance. His address, delivered against the backdrop of regional tensions, was not just about politics, but about sovereignty, unity, and the threats looming over Venezuela and Colombia. The speech touched on themes of peace, narcotics, sovereignty, and the struggle against destabilization. It also highlighted a broader call for regional solidarity. What unfolded was more than a political statement. It was a declaration of resolve. President Gustavo Petro began with an appeal to shared responsibility and mutual protection between two nations whose histories and futures remain intertwined. He said, "We protect and preserve it ourselves, Venezuelans and Colombians united for peace, for prosperity, and for sovereignty." This line set the stage for his entire address. Petro framed the challenge as one that transcended borders, urging Venezuelans and Colombians alike to see themselves as custodians of regional peace. His choice of words, unity, prosperity, sovereignty, were deliberate, designed to project not only a defensive posture, but also an optimistic vision. He quickly moved to explain the scale of threats faced. These were not vague warnings, but clear references to the dangers of narcotics and chemical materials. Petro emphasized how these substances were being used as tools to disrupt Venezuela's social fabric. He stated against chemical materials and narcotics that were meant to disturb the calm of our homeland. Here, Petro's framing was unmistakable. He cast narcotics not just as a criminal issue, but as part of a calculated effort to destabilize the state. This rhetoric was aimed not only at the local audience, but also at international observers, presenting Venezuela as a nation under siege, yet firmly resisting. Petro's tone then shifted to the operational side of national defense. He described the technical work being done to counter threats, offering the audience a glimpse into the preparation and expertise of the security apparatus. According to him, it involves the identification and preparation of explosive charges, including the placement and breaching of the same for insertions. While stark in its detail, this statement underscored the seriousness of the training and readiness efforts underway. It was not only about rhetoric or symbolism. Petro wanted to stress the practical measures being adopted. This acknowledgement of military and technical readiness was also meant as reassurance, both to allies within the nation and to those skeptical of its stability. The president then marked the passage of time, a period that he said tested resilience and proved collective strength. He declared, "Today I can say after 20 continuous days of announcements inside a Caracas metro car." The reference to 20 continuous days revealed both persistence and endurance. It showed that this was not a momentary issue or a passing concern. Instead, the Venezuelan leadership framed it as a long-term battle, unfolding day by day. The mention of a metro car gave the statement a grounded, almost symbolic setting, an everyday place transformed into the site of defiance and perseverance. The inclusion of such imagery served to draw ordinary citizens into the narrative. The metro car, a space known by thousands of Venezuelans, became a metaphor for resilience amid turbulence. As Petro spoke of unity, he broadened the message beyond politics and security. He invoked the idea of fraternity among those charged with protecting the nation. He said, "Joined and united with one purpose, Rufal seen, brothers of aviation, men of honor, of the red ranks of the Guard of Honor, watching over though the final words trailed, the intent was clear. The emphasis was on collective identity, brothers of aviation, men of honor, guardians of sovereignty." This was more than just a tribute to the military. It was a public acknowledgement of the symbolic role these institutions play in maintaining the integrity of the state. The invocation of honor and fraternity also worked to strengthen the bond between the armed forces and the civilian population. In Petro's framing, the military was not distant, not detached, but part of the same national struggle that ordinary citizens faced. While Petro's address contained phrases meant to inspire solidarity, beneath the surface it conveyed deeper layers of meaning. His repeated emphasis on sovereignty and unity hinted at ongoing regional challenges. The mention of chemical materials and narcotics signaled the government's effort to tie domestic challenges to external threats. This positioning serves two purposes. First, it places Venezuela's internal struggles within a broader narrative of international interference. Second, it aims to rally the population by framing these issues as existential threats rather than isolated policy failures. The reference to explosive charges and breaching operations also reflects the state's heightened military focus. By publicly acknowledging such measures, Petro is sending a message not just to Venezuelans but to international actors. Venezuela is preparing for threats at every level, from narcotics smuggling to armed destabilization. Perhaps the most striking part of Petro's address was not its technical detail, but the metaphors drawn from ordinary life. The image of a Caracas metro car stood out. It was a subtle way of connecting the extraordinary with the everyday. For a population often fatigued by political speeches, this imagery anchored the president's words in familiar reality. The deliberate mention of 20 continuous days also added a human dimension. It made the struggle feel tangible, time-bound, and lived. This is a classic journalistic device, grounding the abstract in the measurable. By using it, Petro sought to underscore endurance and persistence as virtues of the Venezuelan spirit. The explicit call to Colombians reflected more than symbolism. Petro's speech was also a reminder of Venezuela's diplomatic outreach in the region. By emphasizing Venezuelan and Colombian unity, he was addressing both the shared history of the two countries and their complicated present relationship. In the context of regional geopolitics, such statements are loaded. They can be seen as invitations to cooperation or as subtle warnings to external actors not to exploit regional divisions. For Petro, this narrative of unity is essential to project strength beyond Venezuela's borders. Petro's praise of the aviation brothers and the Guard of Honor highlights the central role of the military in Venezuela's political and social landscape. By emphasizing honor, unity, and brotherhood, the president reaffirmed the military's place as both protector and symbol. Such rhetoric is designed to ensure loyalty within the armed forces, while also presenting them as part of the national identity. In Petro's words, these men of honor are not merely soldiers, but custodians of sovereignty. This dual role, practical and symbolic, is at the heart of Venezuela's current political narrative. Taken as a whole, Petro's address is more than a speech. It is part of a continuing narrative of resistance against narcotics, against destabilization, against threats both real and perceived. His words positioned Venezuela as both besieged and unyielding, fragile yet defiant. By highlighting unity with Colombia, military readiness, and the resilience of ordinary citizens, Petro attempted to weave a single story. Venezuela remains strong because its people and its institutions are bound by shared purpose. As the echoes of Petro's words settled, what lingered was not just the specifics of narcotics or explosive charges, but the overarching message of unity and resistance. His appeal was as much to the imagination as to the intellect, invoking sovereignty, brotherhood, and shared struggle. In the words of President Gustavo Petro himself, "We protect and preserve it ourselves, Venezuelans and Colombians united for peace, for prosperity, and for sovereignty." It was a reminder that in Venezuela's current moment, politics is not just about governance. It is about survival, identity, and the fight to define the nation's path forward.